Huh. So Wheeler's delayed choice experiment. I've talked about it a lot. That if you start if your conscious self, your quantum being, the one that lives inside your microtubules, this is that being. It's so fucking hard to explain. That being, okay, really, this reality is foreign to it. You see, using photons for the dual slit experiment and using solid particles for the dual slit experiment kind of brings into question some pretty weird things. And that is that, well, number one, the reality I see is not the exact reality you see. And that until observed, until measured, wave functions don't collapse, and therefore nothing exists. But you see, this is what drew me to quantum mechanics for my near-death experience, was that, you see, those wave functions, the uncollapsed wave functions, are originating from an infinite point. This is the holographic principle of reality. It's so bizarre to think that these generated wave functions are coming from an infinite point. They permeate the universe. And then we as observers create a reality around ourselves by collapsing these wave functions, simply by observing them. But it doesn't mean that we are all collapsing those wave functions in the same way. What makes us all the same, and what connects us, and what makes us all identical to one another, is the real life entity within us, which is our quantum self that is contained in our microtubule system. You see, that it was simply called scaffolding, and there were all kinds of terms for the microtubule system. Yet, when it goes through the mitochondria system, we've studied that organ for 100 years, and they don't know anything about it. Where the microtubules enter this organ, that is part of your chromosome. It's actually a large part of your chromosome. And it is disassembled. It passes through the chromosome because we don't really understand what goes on between each side of this organ. And then your microtubule system is reassembled. And little robots, literally little robots, verify and run up and down your strings of microtubules to verify that everything was carried out as it should be. It's not part of microtubules aren't DNA. They're not. They're copied by an organ within the organelle itself. It's so bizarre, and nobody paid attention to it. Nobody really fucking paid attention to it until Hammeroff started looking at it in the 80s, and that's when I started looking, because I was in the depths of my most highest depression ever, because I needed, for some reason, because it fucked me up so badly when I was young. My near-death experience, and it literally, it was ripping me apart. It was scaring my mom, and so I had to deny it. I had to find a way to deny it. And I ignored it up until the age of around 16, when I was basically, at that time, I was addicted to reading good science fiction. And I read this one about a soul trap. This guy built a machine, the type of machine that contains the incredibly hot plasma, like a tokamak. And that it was a tokamak that captured human souls, because there was no way for the quantum energy contained within the body to escape, as it was being contained by these super ultra strong magnetic fields. And it was really creepy, and it freaked me out, because even then, even at that time, I understood that there was two of us here. There's two of us. There's the physical body, and then there's the quantum body that lives within us. And this is why when people have a near-death experience, one of the first things they do, like I did, I saw myself. I saw this little skinny little blonde kid, kind of about this angle, feet lower than the head, and my arms were like this, and I was slowly sinking. And I knew it was me, but there was no fear and there was no confusion. I wasn't confused. Why am I looking at my body? There was no confusion. And I immediately had the thought, oh, this is what it's like to die. I knew instinctually, almost like an instinct. Some people have a different experience than mine. I don't know how many people have had a near-death experience like mine, because there was this violent, very violent movement, and I was there. And when I showed up, there were the two little girls, and they were terrified. They were scared of me, because I wasn't supposed to be there. And that's what she said, "You're not supposed to be here." And she said it as if she knew me personally. That's when I was surrounded by these beings who just exuded love and understanding and acceptance. There was no feelings of guilt it's just so incredibly hard to explain that people write books this thick, and it's still hard to explain. I've spent 15 years here trying to explain it. Simply because there are people that are afraid of death. They're terrified of death for whatever reason. That this life is just a waste, or why am I alive? Why do I live? Why am I alive if it's just going to end and just be blackness? And those are the people that lean towards suicide, because they see no reason. They see no reason. And I am supposed to tell them, oh, hell yes, there is a damn good reason. There is a damn good reason. This is your birth canal for the next place, and that the lessons you're learning here can only be learned here. As an animal, as a physical being. and that each individual, again, collapsing these wave function in their own way, seeing the world in their own way, they have an individual lesson. And that lesson is incredibly important. It's not just important to you, it is important to every sentient being that has ever existed or will ever exist in this universe. Incredibly important to untold, unnumbered trillions upon trillions of other beings. It's important. It's that important that you fulfill whatever it is you're supposed to do here. I am doing it right now by talking to whoever's supposed to watch this video. I'm doing what I'm supposed to do, what I agreed to do, what I said I would do. And in return, I get peace of mind. Finally. And I knew that's how it would be, that it would be towards the end of my life after this decision, this split, this why in my life, okay? And a lot of people have that why in their life, and some people make the wrong choice. In which case, you go to that place where I went. You can stay there for 1 billion years if you want, but you will, without fail, every single one will come back to fulfill their promise, their mission, the reality they created, those uncollapsed waveforms. Okay, you had a hand in creating those before the universe existed. When the universe came into being, all that information was already there. And you, so to speak, have a job to do. We all do. We all are supposed to fulfill our tasks. And suicide is one of those things that is inescapable as far as guilt goes. It will not be accepted. And it is the same with murder. When there is murder, that timeline for that person is ended. But they immediately are accepted with God. The murderer, on the other hand, carries that burden into death. And then they have to relive that life of that person that they murdered. And they have to relive the life of the people that loved that person and now suffer for the loss. And it can go on quite some time. I always talk about these billionaires. Instead of feeding people, they go buy a giant fucking boat for their ego, and that they think that they're successful and that they have that you know, they're living the dream. They have no fucking idea the horror that they've created for themselves by doing that. You see, if a billionaire wants the rewards, the true rewards of heaven, it is what every Christian should know. And the point of Jesus was, like the rich guy, well, okay, go sell everything you have, give it to the needy, and then come follow me. And you see, all these billionaires don't get that message because it's basic in our human soul. That's why it's in the Bible. It's not that God said it or Jesus said it, because, as I've said 100 times, there have been many Jesuses. But our instincts tell us certain things are true. You see, a lot of lives could have been saved. A lot of pain and suffering could have been avoided instead of buying a big fucking boat and a boat to take care of that boat. What good does it do you to have that fucking boat when on your last day you end up at this place where there's nothing but love and acceptance and understanding, and you are black as coal? You are black and miserable and disgusting and shameful and all those things that I saw in myself. It's hard to admit that that was me. And, I didn't for many years because they told me when I saw the decrepit, sad, broken man on the park bench in the most beautiful setting you could ever imagine. And here's this guy in a black robe with a hood, a most miserable creature. And I asked, who's that? And they said, you know who that is. And they were very serious. It was really only one of the very serious things they said, other than when I hurt them asking if I would be rich. When they showed me, when I said I'll go back, before they showed me my life, I said, will I be rich? And I could feel, and I remember the pain. I remember the pain because I was near death. I wasn't dead. I was near death. I was still a little boy with all knowledge. It's hard to explain, but I was still just a little human boy with all knowledge. There was still a connection to my body. And I asked if I would be rich. And I could feel the pain because you see, that's the horror of this existence on our planet right now, is that it could be a different place. Humans could choose to make it a different place. But those that are in power and have all the money and the resources, you see, they're the ones that have to change first. And the terrible reality is that they're the last ones who will change. They're the last ones that will give their last dollar to someone. The poor, homeless fucking guy on the street, he'll give you his last dollar. But a fucking billionaire like Jeff Bezos or any of them, okay? Nope. Because you see, they deserve it because they worked hard and they have all these reasons they have in their head why they should spend what they've taken from this world on themselves. And when I asked if I would be rich, I felt it. I felt it. Everything was love. And I was just, it's hard to explain how happy I was. And I was only going back because I knew I couldn't be with God unless I did. Being someplace where it was all love and understanding and acceptance and all knowledge, the most perfect place in the world was the most perfect place out of this world, was still nothing compared to being with God. But I wasn't allowed to see all that entailed either, okay? That was held from me. And when I asked if I would be rich, I felt it. I felt it. And they said, and you see, all of these pictures went through my mind. Tuxedo was one of the things I saw, was a person in a tuxedo with people that were subservient to him. And how the person in the tuxedo was thinking about others as being less. And that's where the pain came from. And then they told me, they said, yes, you'll be rich, but not in that way. Now, if understanding how the world actually works is being rich, well, I'm rich as fuck, okay? But I got to live. Everything now is borrowed time for me as far as I can tell. Everything now is, every day is a new day. Every day is an opportunity for me to help save someone, to have someone look at their life differently. And, I got a letter with someone telling me that they were going to take their lives until they saw my video. And I believe that person follows my channel to this day. And no one can be richer than that. than being told that. You see, I've tried to save people in this world, physically. Not my task. This guy up the street, he was walking across the street and he just fell. And I heard tension in the air. And I went outside and I looked and I saw a guy, I saw a red blazer or a small blazer pulling up to the side of the street over here. And I saw one guy turning the guy over and checking his pulse. And so I just took off at a sprint. And I got up there and started, me and this guy giving him CPR. And this woman, she gets out of her car and she has a breathing bag. I don't know if she was a nurse or what, but she had a respirator bag. And we started working on this guy hard. And you see, when you're giving CPR, most people don't understand because they watch TV and shit, whereas I've actually had to do it more than one time. There's really a lot of effort involved. You literally have to smash that chest. I mean, there's a lot of effort involved. And we worked on him for, I don't know, 10, 11 minutes. I know my knees were killing me because I was sitting on hot asphalt with my knees because I was wearing shorts. And it was hurting like crazy. And I remember telling myself, hey, fuck you. I remember telling myself that, hey, fuck you and your whiny little bitch ass. Keep fucking working. And when the ambulance got there and the EMS guys got out, they let me and the guy who was working on him continue to work on him as they were doing other things. They were checking his blood oxygen level and shit, and we had his blood oxygen level up to a point that was good. And I continued on for another few minutes, but I was just exhausted. And I told the guy, I can't continue, because they wanted us to keep going while they did other stuff, while they were wiring him up and stuff. And I said, man, I just can't continue. I can't go any longer. And so he took over. I stood up and he took over. And I walked away. I didn't even stay. I knew he was gone. But we had his body in good shape. But for me, that was a failure, because I knew that no matter how hard I worked, I wasn't going to be able to save this guy. But that's not the only way to save someone. Getting people to look at their life in a different way, or getting people to understand that suicide is something that is not accepted in the quantum realm. You will collapse the wave functions that you created. You will create that reality around you that you said you would create. We made all of our choices and decisions, everything that this life that we live, okay, we created that before the universe came into existence. And I've had to deduce that by the things they told me and didn't tell me, what they would show me and what they wouldn't show me. Because they said I was Laren before, and that's what I chose. And they knew, and they could show me my whole life. Before drowning, after drowning, how could they do that if that information didn't exist already? And it's not accepted. You will simply go back. And this is the multiverse thing. The multiverse thing. You see, the universe continues on. The time crystal, as I call it, continues to grow. As all the sentient minds in the universe collapse these incoming wave functions, it grows a crystal. And if there's a gap in there, it's unaccepted. You will go back, and then by the incredible grace of a true God, you're not punished. You simply will Stay there as long as you want, basking in love and understanding, but you will choose to go back because God is so much better than that. And you will go back to exactly the same place. You're not born again. There is no such thing as reincarnation. That's cheating. That was made very clear to me. There is no such thing as reincarnation. Now, it doesn't mean that people can't have memories of other people because, like I said, you can access every human mind that has ever lived and know their life from birth to death as if you lived it. And this is why people are like, oh, well, I used to be a warrior in the, 20th century. No, while you were in that place where we create reality, you simply acquired that information. Like I did when I was in my near-death experience. I could live the life of anyone. All quantum information was accessible by all sentient minds. And you will go back, you'll go to the same school, you'll get your first kiss in the same place, in the same person. I mean, everything will be the same right up until the point where you make that bad decision. And if you make that bad decision again, you go back and you will cycle. And I often wondered how many times did I cycle before I decided not to? Because the universe goes on, and now you are basically inside of this time crystal, filling in that gap. And you will do what you said you were going to do. There is no escaping that. But this is the beautiful part. You can change anything at any time. That's how you decide, well, I'm not going to commit suicide. I'm going to stick it out. I'm going to rough it out because people need me. The world needs me. The universe needs me. All the intelligent minds who ever lived need me. And I'm not going to do it. I'm going to stick it out because there are people that love me. There are people that I love. Hmm? Yeah. So I guess for that person, there's a multiverse. But in reality, you just go back in time, so to speak, and go back in time, and go back in time, and go back in time. Time and space doesn't exist, or you can go into any time or space when you're there. You can see and live the life of someone that lived thousands of years before you. And they can live your life. This is what happens in that where all the beings are around God. They can learn every valuable lesson and in doing so become better and more spiritual and closer to God. I don't know what happens. Maybe the circle gets smaller and smaller as the less advanced beings become more spiritual, learning and learning and learning. Maybe we move forward closer. I don't know. That's way out of my pay grade. But I know that suicide is something that is impossible to succeed at because it won't be allowed. Now, I know I had two close friends commit suicide, and I know what they're going through. I know what they'll go through. I'm here. They could still be in that near-death place. They haven't decided to go back yet, but they will. They all do. All do. None. There's never ever been a suicide that didn't end up in the cycle. But you see, when that person decides to not commit suicide, we'll already be hundreds, 10 years, 1,000 years, 10,000 years into the future. I often wondered how many times did I make this cycle before I decided to not do it. And it came down to others helping, other human other entities, other conscious sentient minds to help me not make that choice. And so here I am, talking about things that are so hard to understand, they're basically incomprehensible and just sounds like gibberish. What I can tell you is some factual things. Number one, study Hameroff and Penrose and the microtubule system so that you understand that your physical body is not your real body. First off, the information that makes you you is not contained in your head, so to speak. And then read other near-death experiences. And what you'll see is the common theme. Okay? That there's a purpose for being here. There's a reason for being here. And it's about learning. I don't like getting up in the morning and understanding why wars are fought. I don't get up in the morning not understanding why Jeff Bezos bought a big fucking boat instead of feeding children. It does confuse me. It does rattle my mind when I think about, oh, you want to impress people by spending $500 million on a fucking boat when you could have spent $500 million or even $100 billion of your $200 billion feeding, clothing, aiding, helping the homeless, helping the hungry, helping develop better schools and hospitals. You could have spent that money and you could have been the most loved and looked up to person in the world. But now when people see you, you're just an arrogant fuck on your big boat. That is, unless you're another arrogant fuck who wants a boat 10 foot bigger. The suffering that these people will see and experience is beyond comprehension. The human mind couldn't handle it. I guarantee you, the human mind couldn't handle it. None of them will escape their punishment, especially the murderers, the mass murderers, the Saddam Husseins, you know what I mean, the Hitlers of our world. They've always been around since sentience happened, since that first guy looking in the water realized, that's me. There's been those motherfuckers who just couldn't have enough, couldn't get enough, and wanted to control others. An animal instinct, an overriding animal instinct that was dominant in their personalities, in who and what they are. This place is real temporary. Real temporary. Hameroff and Penrose. Okay? Do it today. Hameroff and Penrose. Number 2, an important message. You don't have to save the world to save yourself. You don't have to, Jeff Bezos he could spend $100 billion tomorrow and never miss that fucking money and save and help so many people, but he won't because he's trapped. See? He's in the most horrible trap you could imagine for what comes next. But you, on the other hand, you take $20. This is the thing. It's the effort and the completion of the effort. Either you help and aid in the effort, or you just simply take $20 and you give it to a charity that's going to spend the money correctly. Mine is St. Jude's Children's Hospital because I know where the money's going to go. Unlike Wounded Warriors or any of those fucks. As those guys are gone, gee, all of a sudden veterans don't matter a fuck, do they? All of a sudden veterans aren't important. All of a sudden wounded veterans are just wounded veterans. But while they were scamming and scheming, okay, so they could spend millions of dollars on themselves, Wounded Warriors were so important, we'll send you a blanket. You can wear a Wounded Warrior t-shirt and be a hero. Yeah, fuck you. You see, they're gone, aren't they? So my choice is St. Jude's Children's Hospital, Shriners, either one, because I know where the money goes. and you give them 20 bucks. And that's as small a thing as you have to do. Make the effort to help someone you don't know. And you don't have to spend your life savings. 20 bucks. Follow through, make the effort, and give St. Jude's 20 bucks. If you can afford $20,000, all the better. But if you can only afford 20 bucks, that's enough.